Most people believe the phrase "dress to kill" is just a clever metaphor. Think again. In the 19th century, it was a literal reality. The most fashionable color of the era wasn't just vibrant, it was fatal. We tend to look back at history as a safer, simpler time, but hidden in the folds of the finest silk dresses was a chemical weapon masquerading as high fashion. We often romanticize the Victorian era as a time of elegance, strict morals, and industrial progress. We imagine gas-lit streets, refined drawing rooms, and a society obsessed with propriety. But beneath the surface of this polite society lay a grim obsession with a specific aesthetic. For decades, the wealthy elite of Europe draped themselves in their homes in a mesmerizing shade of emerald. It was the color of nature, of spring, and of status. However, this obsession came with a hidden price tag that no milliner or decorator advertised. Today, we are looking at Scheele's green, the pigment that poisoned an entire generation. We are going to dismantle the image of the pristine Victorian home and reveal the toxic chemistry that turned ballrooms into gas chambers and nurseries into death traps. From the laboratories of Sweden to the dance halls of London, this is the story of how the Victorian world literally died itself to death. To understand the horror, we must first understand the seduction. Before 1775, creating a stable, vibrant green pigment was notoriously difficult. Nature is full of green, but capturing it in a jar was a nightmare for artists and dyers. Most greens were dull, based on vegetable dyes that faded quickly into browns or grays upon exposure to light. The world wanted a green that would last, a green that shouted wealth. Enter Carl Wilhelm Scheele, a Swedish chemist with a brilliance for discovery and apparently a disregard for safety. In 1775, he combined copper and arsenic to create copper acetoarsenite. The result was a green so vivid, so piercingly bright, that it instantly made every other pigment look obsolete. It was cheap to produce and easy to bind to fabric and paper. It was a miracle of modern chemistry. Here's where history gets fascinating. Scheele knew exactly what he had made. He knew arsenic was lethal. It was a favorite poison of assassins for a reason. Yet, the commercial potential outweighed the biological cost. The irony is sharp. Scheele himself died at age 41, likely due to heavy metal poisoning from his own experiments. But his creation lived on, becoming the Paris green that would soon coat the walls and bodies of the Western world. Now fast forward to the mid-19th century. The pigment had taken the fashion world by storm. Under the new bright gas lights of Victorian ballrooms, Scheele's green glowed with an intensity that natural dyes couldn't match. It was hypnotic. But these weren't modern dyes that bond chemically with the fabric. The arsenic pigment was often just a powder, mixed with starch and pasted onto the dress. Imagine a woman entering a ballroom. She is wearing a gown containing 20 yards of fabric. Research indicates such a dress could hold approximately 900 grains of arsenic. To put that in perspective, a lethal dose for an adult is about 4 to 5 grains. She was walking around with enough poison to kill 200 people draped over her crinoline. As she danced, the fabric rustled. As she spun, the dry pigment flaked off, creating an invisible toxic cloud around her. She wasn't just wearing poison, she was broadcasting it. The British Medical Journal in 1862 didn't mince words. They wrote that a woman in such a dress carries in her skirts poison enough to slay the whole of the admirers she may meet with in half a dozen ballrooms. The women who wore these dresses suffered too. They complained of inexplicable rashes, severe headaches, and hair loss. They were slowly being metabolized by their own vanity. But because the poisoning was gradual, the connection was often missed. The dress was beautiful. The symptoms were just dismissed as a delicate constitution. Now, let's be clear. While the wealthy suffered from skin sores and nausea, the true horror was reserved for those who couldn't afford the dresses, the ones who made them. The demand for Scheele's green wasn't just for fabric, it was used extensively in artificial flowers, a staple of Victorian accessories. These green wreaths were worn in hair, on bonnets, and pinned to gowns. Consider the case of Matilda Scheurer. She was 19 years old, an artificial flower maker in London. Her job was to dust the leaves with the green powder. She didn't wear protective gear. She breathed in the dust day after day. It coated her hands, her lunch, and the air she breathed. In 1861, Matilda died. Her death was not peaceful. It was a gruesome spectacle that shocked the public. Medical reports from the time described her vomiting green waters. The whites of her eyes had turned green. Her fingernails and hands were stained the same emerald hue that was so fashionable in the West End. An autopsy confirmed her internal organs had been destroyed by arsenic. She was literally died to death from the inside out. Here is where the irony bites hardest. The society that prided itself on moral purity and the protection of women was driving an industry that chewed up young working-class women to produce an aesthetic. Matilda was not an anomaly. She was collateral damage for a color trend. The Times noted that a lady dancing in her green wreath was effectively dancing with the ghost of the girl who died to make it. If the danger had been confined to ballrooms, perhaps the death toll would have been lower. But the Victorians didn't just wear this green. They lived inside it. Scheele's green became the standard for wallpaper. It brought the freshness of the garden into the dark, soot-stained homes of the Industrial Revolution. It was particularly popular in bedrooms and nurseries. But there was a hidden chemistry at work here, far stranger than simple contact poisoning. Victorian homes were often damp and poorly ventilated. When moisture met the arsenic-laden paper and mold began to grow, a chemical reaction occurred. The mold metabolized the arsenic and released it as a gas, trimethylarsine, also known as gaseous. This gas was odorless and invisible. A family could go to sleep in a newly decorated room and never wake up. It was particularly lethal to children. There are countless tragic accounts of wasting diseases in nurseries that miraculously cleared up when the child was sent to the coast for fresh air, only to return when they came back to their green rooms. There is even a persistent historical theory regarding Napoleon Bonaparte. While in exile on St. Helena, he spent his final days in a room with, you guessed it, green and gold wallpaper. Samples of his hair tested later showed high levels of arsenic. The walls that held him prisoner may have also been his executioner. By the 1860s, the medical data was undeniable. Doctors knew it. Chemists knew it. The public was beginning to suspect it. Cartoons in Punch magazine depicted skeletons asking ladies for a dance, referencing the dance of death. Yet, the resistance to change was immense. And here's a detail that often gets left out of the history books. William Morris, the father of the arts and crafts movement and a socialist hero, was one of the staunchest defenders of arsenic wallpaper. Why? Because he owned shares in the largest arsenic mine in the country. He dismissed the doctors as alarmists, claiming one would have to bite the wallpaper to get sick. While France and Germany passed laws banning arsenic pigments, Britain protected the industry. It took over 30 years after Matilda Scheurer's death for effective regulation to finally take hold. The logic was cold. The freedom of commerce outweighed the value of human life. We look back at the Victorians and wonder how they could be so blind. How could they prioritize a shade of green over the lives of their children and workers? But ask yourself, what is the cost of the fast fashion we consume today? What chemicals are woven into the fabrics we wear right now? Are you admiring history, or are you looking at a warning? Because some objects are far stranger and deadlier than they appear. If you want to uncover more hidden histories of everyday objects, make sure you are subscribed. Until next time.